Oh, this is awesome. Okay, I see lots of people in here already. I'm gonna give it a minute to just let people filter in. But for all of you who are here already, welcome. EagleCam Live Q&A is today. We're lucky enough to have 2 chicks already with us. And we got a lot of questions in, so I'm really excited for this. In the meantime, while we're waiting, if you guys can send in the chat maybe how many, I see we have some classrooms joining in. It would be awesome to know how many students are watching because we can't always tell from the participant list. It would be awesome to know where you're watching from, and any other info you want to give. Like I said, we have a lot of questions to answer and we're gonna fit in as many as we can. But if you have like a burning curiosity that you come up with while you're watching and you want to share it in the Q&A, you can definitely do that. I can't promise we'll be able to answer it today, but we will follow up with lots more information because you guys were great enough to send in some really excellent questions. So we want to make sure that you get the answers. Okay. Okay, it looks like we have a lot of people and I don't want to waste any time. So let's get started. I'm going to do a really quick intro. My name is Lisa. I'm going to be kind of taking the role of of all of the people who are watching today. So you sent in questions or you're tuning in to hear answers to questions that other people sent in. I'm going to be asking those questions to our bald eagle expert, Larissa. And I am coming to you from Duke Farms. So just a teensy little bit about us. We are a center of the Doris Duke Foundation, and we have a property that's about 2,700 acres that we take care of and steward and restore so that it can serve as a place where people can connect to nature and come here to learn about the nature around them and how to live sustainably with it. So what I'd like to say about that is that if you've watched our EagleCam or seen our resources on our website or gotten our newsletter but never been here, it's time to fix that because we're open and we're welcome, and so you can come on your own with your family, with your friends, with your class, anything like that. We hope you visit us, and you might get to see the eagle flying or the eagles flying overhead when you do. It's been known to happen. So that's us. I'm Lisa, and I'll let Larissa introduce herself, and then we're going to start with the questions so that we can get as many answered as possible.
Hi, I'm excited to be here, and thank you, Lisa and Duke Farms, for having me. I work for the Conserve Wildlife Foundation in New Jersey. That is a nonprofit, and we are located, our main office is in Princeton, but we have employees throughout the state. I myself live down in Cape May County. I began with the Conserve Wildlife Foundation in 2000, and that's when I started working on the New Jersey Bald Eagle Project. And so I've been working with bald eagles for 24 years now. And I work with the state of New Jersey, the Endangered Non-Game Species Program, and I coordinate the project. So I coordinate all the nest monitors who monitor the eagle nests. I work with the state to map all new eagle nests. I work with any issues that come up as far as injured eagles or eagles that are killed, and we get those to rehab. We pick up the bodies. I also work with other species. I work with eastern tiger salamanders, shorebirds, ospreys, barn owls, but eagles are my main project.
Awesome. Thanks, Larissa. So you're well suited to answer these questions. I'm going to start with stuff about food because we got a lot of questions in about what the eagles eat, how they get it, and I haven't had breakfast yet, so I'm kind of focused on food right now. I think it's one of the things we get to observe most closely because of the EagleCam, because we see what the eagles bring back to the nest. I mean, I see some things in there right now. So basically, just generally, we got a lot of questions about about what they eat. So what is in a bald eagle's diet?
Okay, so yes, this is having this cam is wonderful because you can see close up what they are bringing into the nest. So if you have been watching the cam, you know that their main food, their main diet is fish. That is why most eagles tend to have their nests near bodies of water, near the Raritan River, such as this, near the coast, near the bay, near a lake, because they mostly go for fish. But as you can see, looking at this nest, they also go for other things, depends where they are, what's available, whatever's easiest. They will take turtles, eagles down south love terrapins. They will take small mammals. I know a squirrel was brought into the nest here the other day. They will also take birds. There's a feather, and I don't know what that is. It looks like a wing. There you can see in the nest. So they will get, smaller birds, not too large birds. And they also will eat roadkill. Or if someone hunts a deer and leaves the carcass, say in a field, they will eat that also.
Okay, so definitely meat eaters. Got it.
Yes.
And how far do they go to get that food? Like how far would we expect them to fly to do their hunting?
It really depends on where the nest is located. During the nesting season, especially when they have chicks, they're going to try and stay as close to the nest as possible, get the food and get back. And it depends what's available. If they're close to water and they're able to get fish easily, they're going to do that and come back. But we do have some nests that aren't as close to water, so those eagles are going to have to go a little further if they're hunting more, let's say small groundhogs or rabbits. They're going to have to go a little bit further. And outside of nesting season, they're not as tied to the nest, so then they're freer to hunt a larger area.
And we always see someone in the nest pretty much at any time. Do both mom and dad do the hunting?
Yes. Yes, so both eagles hunt. So when they were on eggs incubating, the female mostly stayed on the eggs in this case. So the male would hunt and then he would come in and that would leave the female free to hunt. And once again, this is eagle by eagle. They're all different, nest by nest. This is nest this year because the male is new and the female's more experienced. We are absolutely seeing her on the nest more. And she has been the one that's been more present, and he has been hunting, but she's actually also gone out and brought food back.
That's awesome. I love that equality. Let's talk about that for a second, because you just mentioned that the male is new. How do we know that? And what do you mean by that?
So once again, because we have this cam, it gives us a really intimate look into their lives. And we know that the previous male, the male who was on the nest last year, was banded. He had a green New Jersey band. He was A59. And because he was on the cam, we were able to see that. And so he was banded in New Jersey, and we have a whole database. So we know that he was banded when he was 6 weeks old in May of 2000. So last year he was 23 years old. Wow. And so we knew that. And then after those last season, he disappeared. We were didn't know what was happening. And then this new male came in with no bands. So, we don't know what happened to him. I mean, no body was ever found, but unfortunately, we're assuming that he would not have left on his own. So he probably did, pass away. Eagles are territorial. We don't know if this new eagle, came in and took over the territory and they fought about it. But yeah, so that's how we know he's new, because he doesn't have the band.
Do we know if mom is new too?
We are pretty sure that she is the same female. Oh, she's calling right now. And one of the reasons we know that is because there's been studies done that shows their eyes, the iris, they have individual their flecks in there. So, and the way they're in there. And so we had gotten a close-up of her last year, and I forget which eye it is, has a specific fleck in the iris, a dark fleck, and this year she also has that. So, and also based on her behavior, we're pretty sure that she is the same female.
Wow, so the eye flecks are like a fingerprint. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And the eagles are so, I think it's interesting, the eagles are so, they have such individual personalities that we can tell from their behavior that this is probably the same one.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And the nest is kind of new too, right? We had something happen to the nest.
That's right. Yep. Yes, last year at the end of the season, right when the two fledges, the chicks that had already were flying, the nest started to collapse. And it collapsed. It didn't collapse all the way, but it collapsed pretty much that they wouldn't be able to use it. Oh, now we can see the chicks. They wouldn't be able to use it as a nest. And so we were wondering, oh no, are they going to come back, nest here, move to another tree? Because, you know, we have the cam there. But yep, they came back and they rebuilt it pretty quickly. And so this is the same tree, just they built it up into a new nest.
Yeah, I know we were all really relieved when we saw them come back. What do you
Yes.
think it is about this spot that makes them want to build a nest here so badly? Is it a really good spot to live if you're a bald eagle?
Well, they've been successful for a lot of years. I mean, it's, you know, it's, these are, you know, the female has been a different female, now it's a different male, but it's the territory, and they're obviously getting, you can see here, she's feeding the chicks. They're getting, you know, enough food that they're able to you know, fledge chicks every year. So also they're not getting disturbed, which is a big thing. Disturbance is a big problem that causes eagles to abandon or leave their nests. So that's why they're staying in the spot.
And when you say disturbance, you mean people, right?
Yes. People, you know, going to the nest, getting too close, trying to get photos. Another type of disturbance is just habitat loss, development, which does happen at a lot of nests, you know, the constant threat of that, which isn't happening here. These eagles are in an area that is preserved and safe for them. So hopefully, you know, they have a good future here.
Yeah. I think I know I'm really grateful that we can get this view of the eagles from the cam without disturbing them at all. They can live how they normally would. Okay, now that we can see the chicks and they're getting a little feeding, I think it's a good time to ask about them, these new guys. So let's see. When we had eggs before these guys hatched, and maybe still sometimes, you can see, now we know it's either mom or dad who's keeping them warm, but we can see them kind of like rock, and it looks like they're dancing a little bit, and sometimes they peck at the nest. What's that about? It's cute, but I always wonder what they're doing.
So what they're doing there is eagles, both the male and the female, but the females is usually larger. They get a brood patch. So it's kind of on their chest and belly where the feathers fall out. It's hormonal when they're getting ready to lay eggs. And so that creates an area where the blood vessels are close to the skin. And you're going to get to see her do it right now. And so when they're doing that, they're putting the eggs and the chicks near their skin, and see, she's doing perfect. And she's rocking down to make sure they're underneath that brood patch so they stay warm. And you know, when they fluff the nest and they peck at it, that's just to put the grass around to keep the eggs and the young chicks warm. And these young chicks, this is called brooding. They can't keep themselves warm until about 10 to 14 days old. So they still need mom and dad to brood, to be on top of them with that brood patch to keep them warm, which is what she's doing now.
They do look really fuzzy though. Does that help keep them warm at all?
The chicks, no, that's down. So right now they don't have feathers. They have this very thin down, and they can't thermoregulate. So that if for some reason I don't know, something, an eagle, one of the eagles would be away from the nest or something happened and those chicks are exposed for too long a period to cold or to rain, it could cause them to die, which is why, we're so cautious about disturbance during this time because, they can't keep themselves warm at this point.
Mm. So they're keeping the chicks warm. They also, like we just saw, they have to do feedings. How often do the chicks need to get fed?
That well, you saw she just got, I'm assuming this is a female. She just got up and she didn't feed for very long. She just gave a little bit to each one. So I think it once again it really depends on the pair. Sometimes they'll go hours without feeding, depending on what nest it is. This pair, she seems to get up pretty frequently and try to feed a little bit to them and then sits back down. And I mean, she obviously has plenty of food. There's no lack of food in the nest for her to feed. So I think she knows she can feel the chicks if they're getting restless and, she can hear them. And that's probably how she knows they're ready to be fed.
Can I ask, I know this can be hard, but how can you tell the difference between the mom and the dad or a male and a female eagle? Because you said you think this might be the mom.
Yeah. So, so male and female eagles look exactly alike except for their size. The male eagle is slightly smaller than the female. Now, that's not easy to tell unless we have monitors who watch each nest, and some monitors can tell. They get to know their eagles, and their male is definitely smaller. The hedges look smaller. The bill looks smaller. These two at Duke Farms this year are very difficult. I can't tell because they look so similar. The size difference isn't as large as in some pairs. I'm assuming this is the female. I could be wrong, but the female in this nest this year has been doing most of the incubation duties and most of the feedings. I don't watch the cam all the time because I have other stuff to do, but from what I've heard from monitor who lets us know what's going on, the female is doing the feeding. So that's why I'm assuming it's her. Since the male's new, it seems like this is, his first year. He's not as active in the feeding. He didn't spend as much time incubating the eggs. So, just I'm not 100%, but I think that's why I think this is a female.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether that's just something about this couple or if that's something that changes when the dad gets more experience, and mom too. So that'll be fun to see in the years to come.
Yes.
Speaking of feeding, sometimes our viewers for the Eagle Chem, they notice that one chick gets a bit more attention than the others, or than its partner if there's only two. And by that I mean they seem to get more food, or just get fed more often. Is that okay? Is that a problem? We don't need to be worried about that, right?
No, and it's too soon. This year it's a little different because these chicks are basically a day apart. I mean, they're so close. Their size difference, if you could tell, you can barely tell the size difference. So in the very beginning, when they first hatched, the second chick was, more wobbly and wasn't getting as much food. But now I feel like they're both pretty equal. And they have, every year these little ones go after each other, and they'll kind of peck each other and fight a little bit. And they've been doing that, and they both seem strong. If viewers go back to some past years, we have had years where there was 3 chicks in a nest and the size difference was amazing. I mean, the one was so small compared to the other two. And that's the case of where you sometimes the third one might not survive because that, if it's not getting fed and the other two are so much larger and being more aggressive, they are able, to get more of the food. But in this case, so far, they seem pretty well matched, pretty similar in size. So, I'm pretty sure they're going to be okay.
That's good to hear. So
Yeah.
eagles can't have more than two eggs and two chicks, because for the past couple of years we've had two every time.
Right now they can have, they usually have 1 to 3 eggs. There's been a few years in the past, and I'd have to go look. On our website, we actually have a list of all the years and how many chicks they had. They did have 3. There are rare cases where 4 eggs have been documented in nests, but that's extremely rare. And the only way we would know if there's 4 eggs is if it happened on a cam. So I would say the usual amount of chicks in a nest is probably 2. I would say is like, the average.
Okay. So now that we have our 2 for this year, it's fun to watch the adults, definitely, but I think sometimes it can be more fun to see how the chicks grow and develop and all of the milestones that they go through in a really short amount of time, actually.
Mhm.
So talk about that for a second. Do chicks learn to walk before they fly? And how does that work? And so how do they learn to walk? We'll talk about walking first.
Yeah, well, if you follow these, you'll see that they do start walking around the nest, before they leave. So she's moving stuff around. So, right now these chicks are young. They're in there, where they're not really able to walk or move out of the nest bowl. Probably, by maybe 4 weeks old, they're going to start strengthening their legs, and they're going to start going out of the nest bowl, and you'll see them walking over the edge. And as they get older, they're going to be able to perch on the edge of the nest. They're going to be able to walk all around, and so then they start exercising their wings. So that happens more when they're feathered, 6, 8 weeks old. You'll start seeing them flapping, jumping around. That's all them exercising their wings, preparing, strengthening their muscles for when they leave, which is fledging, when they leave the nest. So from now until fledging can be anywhere. It depends on the chicks and pair, from 10 to 14 weeks. So you have that time period where you're going to see them as they're growing, as they're getting larger. So yeah, it's really, exciting to see the changes as they go along. And that's why this cam is so great, because other nests, the volunteers who are watching it, they're really only seeing the adults' behavior for those first few weeks, because you can't see a nest, you can't see the chicks like this. So they're just going by the adults' behavior. So this is a really neat view into their world.
Yeah, it would be so different if we couldn't see the little fuzzballs. I just saw her do, if it is mom, I saw her snuggle up with her brood patch again. And so, the chicks
Mm-hmm.
look nice and cozy in there. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of wondering, how does mom or dad, if he's sitting on the chicks, how do they stay warm so that they can keep the chicks warm? Do they have special ways of doing that?
Well, you can see well, right now, her feathers. And you'll see sometimes, I don't know, she'll do it like her feathers will kind of go up a little bit. And that is because they are able to, I guess they're fluffing out their feathers, and they're able to trap heat in between the feathers and their body, and that's what's keeping them warm. So, I mean, we've all seen them up there covered in snow, freezing temperatures on eggs. But because of those feathers, it's acting as kind of an insulator that's able to, to keep the adults warm.
So we had some questions about, do eagles live in cold places? If they're good
Mm-hmm.
at staying warm, how cold? I mean, New Jersey has cold winters, but there are places
Mm-hmm.
that get much, much colder. Are there eagles there, bald eagles?
Well, Alaska has probably, I would say, has probably probably does have the largest eagle population in the United States, and it's cold up there. So yes, eagles are, live in cold areas. But that being said, so New Jersey eagles that are nesting here, they stay in New Jersey year round. They don't migrate. But some birds that are, further north, even, they nest up there, but they might tend to go further south because their main, like I said, their main food source is fish. And if they're in an area where everything's frozen over, all the waterways, they're not going to be able to get food. Say there's snow on the ground, it's going to be harder to find prey. They're coming down here. Further south, we have a really large wintering population of eagles because it's rare that in New Jersey, especially lately, that things are totally frozen over. So we have those birds coming down here. Now in Alaska, there's still a large winter population up there, but what they're doing is they're moving further south in Alaska. They're more along the coast in the winter where it doesn't freeze, where they're able to get food. So it's really not so much the cold that it's the eagles, it's the food. Finding the food in the winter with the frozen water and the snow cover. So that's why they come, further south. But they go back up north then to nest.
Thinking about that makes me think of food chains and how, eagles, they need to be part of a food chain where you have every level. You have plants, you have herbivores, and then small carnivores, and then the eagle who might eat the herbivores like rodents, or the small carnivores, or like we said, the aquatic ones that has a food chain too. Are bald eagles at the top of their food chain, or do they have any predators that would eat them?
They're pretty much at the top of the food chain as far as adults. So I'll start with adults. So adults, nothing's really going to attack adult bald eagle to eat it. What can happen is territorial issues with eagles, and eagles kill eagles. So as the population's increasing, we're seeing more of these territorial issues where eagles are fighting with eagles. And it does cause injuries. It sometimes causes death. And we know that because if an eagle is found on the ground, we get that call to go out. So, they fight with each other. And as far as the chicks in the nest, they great horned owls can prey on eagle chicks in the nest. We've had, well, it was on Duke Farms, I forget how many years ago, a red-tailed hawk came into the nest, and the eagle actually killed the red-tailed hawk. Raccoons could get up into a tree and when there's eggs, take an egg, or even a small chick. So there's that type of situation, but with the chicks. But as far as the adults, they are pretty much at the top of the food chain.
You mentioned some other birds of prey like great horned owls, red-tailed hawks. Are those birds that eagles are related to? We had a question about eagle relatives.
So bald eagles are the only eagles that nest in New Jersey, but there are also golden eagles. We haven't had any nesting in New Jersey. They do come through during migration. They are sighted, and they are slightly larger than bald eagles. They don't have the white head or the white tail. And there are other species of eagles. But this is the bald eagle and the golden eagle are the only species of eagles that are in North America. except I should say there's a bird called a stellar eagle, which is a really, if you look that up, a really neat eagle that lives in, does not live in this country, but after a storm, it ended up in the United States. And it was seen on the East Coast for a while, and I'm not sure what happened to it, but that was a very, very unusual event. And people often get ospreys is another raptor, and they are fish eaters. They also live near bodies of water, and eagles and ospreys do live together, coexist. They do sometimes fight over prey or nesting areas, but ospreys don't come back until mid-March. So the eagles are the ones that start the earliest, and before the other raptors start nesting.
Does that mean that their chicks will fledge first too?
Yeah, except for, I should say, great horned owls also nest pretty early. So their chicks will start leaving the nest about this, around the same time with eagles. Now, that being said, Duke Farms already has 2 chicks, but we are monitoring, over 200 pairs in New Jersey, and a lot of those pairs are on eggs. We've only had, I believe, maybe 14 pairs that have hatched. Some eagles aren't even on eggs yet. So there's a really wide range, and Duke Farms is kind of at the early end. They laid their eggs in January, but most lay their eggs in February, and then there's some that are still laying in March. So these birds will, the chicks will be fledged while others are still in the nest.
That is a big window. Do we know why? Is there a benefit to waiting longer? Like maybe there's more food in the ecosystem, or is there a benefit to doing it early like these guys did?
Once again, I think that's just individual because, we have a bird, you could say, oh, well, the ones up north are waiting because it's a little colder in North Jersey, but we have a pair in North Jersey that was the earliest one to lay eggs. So that I don't know. Sometimes, a pair, usually if they lay, say they always lay around the first week of February, they usually do. But if there's a new bird in the pair, sometimes that switches up and it'll be later or earlier. So I really think it's just dependent on the individuals in the pair.
That's really cool. I, of course, am mostly watching the Duke Farms Eagle Cam, but now I kind of want to get another one into my repertoire and compare them because I didn't know that there was so many differences like that. Very cool.
And if people are watching, there's eagle cams all over the country, you'll know that in Florida, they start on eggs in their nesting season in the fall. So they already have, chicks that are much older. So yeah, it just really, in New Jersey, it's closer, but the further south, they're going to start earlier.
I bet life as a bald eagle in Florida is so different because the ecosystem and the climate is so very different.
Yes.
But they can adapt, I guess, to whatever they have around them. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What do I want to ask next? Okay, this kind of works. So we had a question. We talked about their relatives, like what bald eagles are related to. And that kind of makes me think about their evolution and how long bald eagles have been around. Were there bald eagles in prehistoric times, or did they have some kind of ancestor back then?
Yeah. Oh, she's yelling at something. There were no, there wasn't bald eagles per se back in prehistoric times. They do know that they found, and I'm certainly not an expert on dinosaurs, but I know that there's a lot of dinosaurs that show they were that's where the birds, bird species, avian species came from. A lot of the dinosaurs, some of them were flying and they evolved into what we now know as bird species. So That is a very good question. And I don't know when, bald eagles first, in the evolution chain, appeared, but they weren't back as bald eagles in prehistoric time.
Hmm. But they may have, had an ancestor with some of the
Oh,
same adaptations, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
So let's talk about those because, like we said, eagles are hunters. They're at the top of their food chain. What makes them so good at providing food for themselves and their chicks? Can we talk about maybe their eyesight and their hearing a little bit?
Yeah, they have excellent eyesight, which enables them to be able to soar, to fly, and to key in on their prey. Um, like if they're going after a fish, you'll often see them, they just, go down with their talons and they're able to grab a fish out of the water. That's not something that as humans we would be able to do or see that far. Um, so yeah, she's calling. So yeah, they have great eyesight. They can also they have very good hearing, so they can also hear. They don't have, if they, sometimes they'll zoom in and you can see they don't have ears like we have ears, but they do have there, you'll see on the side there, they're like little areas on the side of their head that are openings where they are able to hear. And here's a good, you can see how far she can turn her head around like that. So you can see when she's sitting in the nest, sometimes she'll be turning her head in all directions. She's always looking, always listening, for what's going on.
He's
Oh,
really
your lights are
cooperative. Yeah, I'm too focused on the eagles. I haven't moved. She's really cooperating with us today. We got to see a lot of behavior from her, like the rocking, the feeding.
She's cleaning her feathers right now. So you can see that she's taking her bill and she's cleaning her feathers.
Very meticulous. What else can we look for in the nest? Like, if we were making a checklist, of behaviors, or maybe like, what are some behaviors that are your favorite to kind of catch on the cam?
Well, at this stage, I particularly love the chicks because they're so little and cute and bobbly. And I like to see feedings, because I like to see how, as the chicks, as you'll see, now they are very bobbly. You see their little heads. Oh, it looks like I just saw something. Oh,
Yeah.
the other eagle's coming in. There we go.
Cool.
You can see at the very top there, just the talons sticking there. So maybe we'll have one come in. But I like to see how, as the chicks, you'll see as the chicks get older and their muscles are strengthening, like their, head and neck muscles, they're able to reach up more and grab that food from her. And the feedings will become easier, as they get older, until they're able, at some point, probably about when they're 8 weeks old, the adults will just drop food in the nest and the chicks will be able to start feeding themselves. So it's just really neat to be able to see what goes on. I also like to see what they're bringing to the nest, because you can see it on camera. It's really interesting to see what prey items they're bringing in.
Yeah, like you said, eagles are at the top of their food chain, so what they eat tells us about what's available in the ecosystem. Like
Exactly.
like we said before, we see a birdwing in there right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
I know that fish is a shad, probably from our local river. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
other stuff in there. So yeah, I love to watch, what's on their menu. That's one of my favorite things to watch for.
Yep.
Um,
They had a squirrel the other day too. I know they brought back.
Yum. So I'm gonna ask some questions about sort of, how we do this cam uh and kind of like what our relationship is with the eagles. So I thought a really good question, because if you don't think about this or you don't know the answer, that this is a great question. Do we need a fence to keep the eagles in so that we can watch them? I mean, they're there all the time. If they had the choice, would they fly farther? Would they leave?
No, that's a good question. No, they are, wild animals. The cam does not affect them at all. They are free to do what they want. We are actually very, very lucky that they have not moved their nests. We had talked about how this nest had collapsed at the end of the season, and there's a new male. That's a good chance that because there was a new male, because the nest collapsed, they could have moved their nest to a new location. And, they're free to do that. We're just very lucky that they rebuilt here, even with a new mate in the pair, and they've decided to nest here again. But I mean, the policy is that we are trying to, interfere as little as possible with, their world. And, the way the cam is set up, it's not affecting them. So that's why it's so neat that we get to see inside their world without, causing them, any harm.
Yeah, I think another related question that we get all the time is, do the eagles have names? Did we name the chicks? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. We do not name the chicks. I don't believe we ever have. There are other cams. There's a lot of eagle cams out there, and some of them do name the chicks. They do name the adults. And people I know, have named these adults, and they'll name the chicks, and they're free to do that. But we don't officially do that because that's always been our policy, that we don't give them names because they are wild animals, and stuff could happen on this cam that is not good, and it could be really hard to watch, and we're trying to keep it in mind that these are wild animals, and we don't control them, and by giving them names, it's making it easier to get attached. But that being said, you get attached anyway, even if they don't have names, because people name them. So I mean, that's just been our policy. But other people do name eagles on eagle cams, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question because it shows that, some of these questions are scientific and we know the answer, and they have a fact, there's a fact that goes along with that. Some of the questions are scientific, but we don't know the answer yet, and people are still studying it. And then there's other kinds of questions where it's up to you. Do you think it's okay to name an eagle or not? Do you
That's
think
right.
that, they should be left as wild animals, or does it help you connect to them? And that's up to everybody themselves. So I think it's cool that we got that whole range of questions.
Yes.
We do ban them though sometimes, which is kind
Yes.
of like naming them, because it gives them an identity that we can use to tell who's who. How do we decide if the eagles are going to get banded or not?
So we've worked with the state to ban eagles, and it's a whole process to ban, and we were doing about 10 nests a year, and we do nests when we know the chicks are about 6 weeks old, because they're not old enough to fly yet, and it doesn't put them in danger of accidentally hopping out of the nest. So that's the main factor. It also includes can we get to it? Is it dangerous? Is the tree strong enough that a climber can get up there? So there's a lot of factors that go into deciding whether we are going to ban a nest. And we have done Duke Farms a lot, because the tree's been climbed, we can get up there. It's since it's on a cam, it's interesting because it's a good way to educate people. It also depends. We need a tree climber and somebody who can also handle raptors. So that's kind of what's going on this year. We don't know really how many nests we are going to, go visit this year and band, because of the fact that we had a great tree climber who had done the tree in the past few years, and he retired. So That's kind of where we're at. So I don't have the answer for that if we're going to visit Duke Farms and Band this year. But as soon as I know, we'll let everybody know.
Yeah, we're still deciding. I think
Hmm.
I'd love to hear about the tree climber because I think it's one of my favorite examples of the fact that no matter what you like to do and what you think you're good at, there is a place for you to do it in science and to help the environment. Whether you like to watch the eagle cam and study them, or whether you like to climb trees, there's something you can do to help. Um, we're almost done. And so I just kind of want to thank everyone for sending in these amazing questions. I hope that you got yours answered, but I know that we didn't get to everyone's. So we will follow up. If you registered for this, then you're going to get an email from us with the recording and also some resources that we can send out to help make sure that everybody's curiosities are satisfied. And I know that as the season goes on and our chicks change and things happen in the nest, there's going to be even more questions. So we'll send something out about, where you can send those questions so that you can keep up with our eagles. And I also just want to thank Larissa for joining us and sharing her expertise. I found it fascinating, and I know all of our attendees did too. So thanks very much.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I mean, if you have any questions, if you reach out to Lisa and she doesn't know, she can reach out to me. And I just want to say, I don't always know the answers either. This is why I love this cam. I learn something new about eagles all the time from nest monitors and from this cam. So, feel free to reach out and I can try to answer your question.
Awesome. All right, well, thanks everybody. I'm gonna stick around for just a few minutes in case people wanted to enter questions into the Q&A so we can collect them and answer them later. But if not, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, Larissa.